You guys, welcome to Sick of Pricks, a type 2 diabetes podcast. I'm Mary, your diabetes bestie. And today we're talking about binge eating. And real talk, this one feels a little bit scary to talk about out loud. But if you know me online or in real life, you know that I've always shared this part of my story honestly. And if you don't know me yet, hi, I'm Mary. And I've been struggling with binge eating disorder since I was a kid. Some of my earliest memories of food are hiding it. Eating in the bathroom so no one could see me, eating entire boxes of Pop-Tarts or Swiss cake rolls in one sitting, Cinnamon Toast Crunch literally calling to me 24/7. This compulsion, the obsession, the feeling of not being able to stop even while part of your brain is literally begging you to stop. Because binge eating is not, I want a snack. It's this exhausting mental war happening in real time where part of you is screaming, stop, you're too full, you don't even want this anymore. And somehow you keep going anyway. And as uncomfortable as it is to admit all of this out loud, I can pretend all I want that binge eating is not part of my story, but it is. It shaped my relationship with food, it shaped my body, and it shaped my self-worth for a really, really long time. And if we're going to have honest conversations about diabetes, weight, health, and healing around here, we can't skip this part. The internal dialogue during a binge, nobody really talks about this. Because for me, it wasn't, well, I already messed up, may as well eat some more. That was not what was happening in my brain during a binge. It was, what are you doing? Mary, stop. Stop. Just stop. Seriously, stop. You're going to make yourself sick. Stop. And then not stopping. That is what is so hard to explain to people who've never experienced it. From the outside, it looks like just eating. But inside your own brain, for me, it felt like panic. Absolute chaos. It was like watching yourself do something you desperately do not want to keep doing while continuing anyway. And then afterwards, the shame would hit me. But not shame because I ate so much, but because I couldn't understand why I couldn't stop. And that feeling will mess with your self-worth really fast. Especially when you already live with diabetes and spend half your life being told your health comes down to your choices. So I had to really reconcile, was I choosing this compulsion? Was that my choice? It was a really, and still is, a really tough battle in my brain, though I've come a really long way, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I think we don't talk about this topic enough. And I think that is one of the hardest parts about binge eating is how isolating it feels. We all feel like we're the only ones who do this. When you live with diabetes, there's already so much attention to food, right? What are you eating? Should you be eating that? How many carbs in that? What did your blood sugar do after you ate that? And food stops being just food. And over time, at least for me, eating started to feel emotionally loaded. It was good choices, bad choices, success, failure, on track, off track, on the wagon, off the wagon. And when you live inside that kind of pressure long enough, eventually something starts to crack. And I spent years, you guys, years and years on my path to wellness, my wellness journey, thinking that the answer was becoming more disciplined, more strict, more controlled, more motivated. I thought if I could just finally get it together, then the food noise would disappear. And honestly, sometimes I could hold it together for a while. That's the part that a lot of people don't understand. People who struggle with binge eating are not always people who don't care. Okay? Sometimes they care so much, they spend their entire lives mentally wrestling with food. I could be incredibly disciplined, meal prepping, tracking everything, following all the rules, being good, until I wasn't. And once that spiral started, it felt impossible to stop. And every single time, you guys, every single time, I promised myself it would never happen again. And every time it happened, my solution was always punishment. Be stricter tomorrow, cut more foods out, do extra cardio, make up for it. I remember eating legit 20 Oreos and making myself go to Zumba after to undo it. But shame never gave me peace around food. It only made me more afraid. And fear works for about 5 minutes before your brain rebels again. What actually started helping me was getting curious instead of cruel to myself. Instead of asking myself, what is wrong with me? I started asking, what's happening here? Was I restricting too hard? Was I emotionally overwhelmed? Was I exhausted? Was I stressed? Had I convinced myself I needed to eat perfectly to be successful? Because there's usually something underneath the behavior. And understanding that changed everything for me. I also want to talk to you about something that completely changed the way I viewed binge eating. Because for years, I thought it was just me being weak. No self-control, no discipline, just broken. This toxic relationship with food that I could not get out of. But binge eating disorder is an actual eating disorder. It is not the personality flaw I believed it was for so long. And the more I learned about it, the more I realized there's a lot more happening than just emotional eating. There are real psychological and biological components to this. Reward pathways in the brain, dopamine, compulsion, habit loops, impulse control. That feeling of being pulled toward food, even while part of your brain is screaming at you to stop, that is real. And honestly, learning that changed something for me because it helped me stop viewing myself as this lazy, failed human being who just couldn't get it together. Now, I want to be careful here because people online love to oversimplify everything into sugar is basically cocaine and you're addicted. Scientifically, things are more nuanced than that. But I do think there are similarities between binge eating and other compulsive behaviors in the sense that your brain starts associating food with relief, comfort, escape, stimulation, reward, sometimes all of that at once, especially if that pattern starts young. And when you combine that with restriction, stress, shame, trauma, loneliness, dieting cycles, and the emotional weight that already comes with diabetes, yeah, it becomes a lot more complicated than just use more willpower. And I need to say this to you guys because I really think it matters. Binge eating is not just liking food too much. The binge itself can come from so many different places. Sometimes it's emotional exhaustion or stress. It's restriction rebounding hard, loneliness, comfort. Sometimes it's years of shame finally exploding. And sometimes it's being so mentally exhausted from constantly trying to be good that your brain finally just goes, I cannot do this anymore. Now, there's something uniquely awful about binge eating when you have diabetes. Because afterward, it's not just emotional for us. It feels measurable. Now there's data attached to your guilt. You see the number on your meter or the graph on your CGM climbing into outer space. And suddenly in your brain, it's not just, oh, I don't feel good. It becomes, I'm hurting myself. I'm ruining everything. What is wrong with me? The combination of shame and fear can get dark really fast, especially because diabetes already comes with so much blame attached to it. And I think a lot of people with diabetes are walking around believing their struggles with food are proof that they're weak. And I do not believe that. I think a lot of people are responding exactly how humans respond when they're trapped in cycles of restriction, shame, pressure, stress, and perfectionism. Because let's be honest, diabetes can make you feel like you're constantly being graded. I've said this before. Your blood sugar gets graded. Your meals get graded. Your weight gets graded. Your habits get graded. And after a while, you stop feeling like a person and start feeling like a report card. And that messes with people emotionally, whether we admit it or not. I had to stop treating one bad moment like a complete failure, because we do that really fast, right? One binge and suddenly your brain is like, well, guess this is just who we are. There's no coming back from this. No, you guys, you had a hard moment. That's it. One binge does not erase every healthy choice you've ever made. One hard night does not cancel out your worth. And for me, learning to stop spiraling after the binge was just as important as addressing the binge itself, because the screw it mentality is what keeps people stuck for weeks, months, or years. And if this is something you deeply struggle with, I want you to hear me on this part. You deserve support, real support, not shame or judgment, not somebody yelling at you about willpower on the internet while eating dried chicken and sadness out of a Tupperware container. Support, because this stuff is emotional and complicated and heavy, and you do not have to carry it alone. I think this conversation matters because so many people with diabetes already feel broken. And binge eating becomes this secret thing they hide because they think admitting it somehow confirms everybody's worst assumptions about them. But pretending it doesn't exist helps nobody. Not the people silently struggling, or the people blaming themselves, or the people listening to this right now feeling seen for the very first time. So if this episode hit home for you today, I don't want your takeaway to be guilt. I want it to be honesty. Maybe this is the first time you admit to yourself, yeah, this is part of my story too. And maybe instead of responding to yourself with punishment and shame, you respond with curiosity and compassion, because your relationship with food matters too, not just your blood sugar. And healing that relationship is part of healing your health, because people with diabetes don't just deserve better blood sugar. They deserve peace too. All right, that's it for today's episode of Sick of Pricks. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And if you've ever thought, why did no one tell me this stuff sooner? That's exactly why I wrote my book, This Wasn't in the Pamphlet. It's real life with type 2 diabetes without the sugarcoating. You can grab it on Amazon or get a signed copy from my website if you want something a little extra. And if you're ready to connect with people who actually get it, come join my Facebook community, Sugar Mama Strong. It's a safe space for support, accountability, and real conversations about health, goals, and life. You can also follow along on Facebook and Instagram for more daily motivation and updates. Everything's linked in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.